Higby and welcome to another story time. We are reading Mr. Dog and the Rabbit Habit by Ben Fogle. This video is for chapter 8 and this chapter is called The Search. So let's dive straight in. Mr. Dog led Socks, Shoe, Flip-Flop and Sneaker after Hussan in a crocodile. The archaeologist went first into a shed full of tools to check it hadn't been disturbed. Mr. Dog and the others hid behind a dustbin while he did so. Hussan's second place to visit was the snack van. He checked the shutters were still secure, pulled on the handle to open the door and looked inside. Mr. Dog caught a wonderful whiff of sausages, one of his favourite foods. But under that he caught a very different smell wafting faintly on the breeze from across the site. Rabbits, he breathed. Lots and lots of rabbits. Working out the wind direction, he looked across the site, past a pair of big tents to a large rickety lean-to, built up against a section of the fence. A door with 2 bolts, top and bottom, secured the way in. Come on, Hussan, thought Mr. Dog, get checking over there. But Hussan did not go in the lean-to's direction. Instead, he made for one of the tents. Mr. Dog and his group followed cautiously again. But the mutt called a stop when Hussan walked straight past the lean-to check on another generator. With a sinking feeling, he realised that Hussan was only checking up on things he thought were valuable to the site. And he had amply demonstrated that rabbits, in his view, were anything but. Besides, the bolts on the door would make it impossible for anyone but a human being to make their way inside. Hussan would never check on the lean-to. Change of plan, muttered Mr. Dog, leaning the way swiftly but stealthily towards the lean-to. Rabbits, I'm sure your mother is inside that shelter. We just need to find a way to get to her. The animals had a couple of close calls. Socks knocked over a broom that brought Hussan dangerously close to discovering them. Mr. Dog had just managed to herd his posse behind some paving slabs in time. They had barely moved to the shelter of a large tarpaulin hanging from the washing line when Jo, the other archaeologist, walked past. She had collected the shards of a broken pottery in a small plastic basin and was ready to try and put the pieces back together. Socks rose up to whisper in Mr. Dog's ear. That lady reminds me of my owner. Except Jo actually seems to be fond of rabbits, thought Mr. Dog sadly. Wait here, bunnies, he whispered. I'm just going to scout out that lean-to see if I can find a way in for us all. As he started away, Socks came after him. He glanced back, checking that Shoe, Flip-Flop and Sneaker couldn't hear. Mr. Dog, he said, nose twitching. You do think my owner is coming back for me, don't you? Mr. Dog hesitated. No, Socks, I'm afraid I don't, and I think deep down you know that too. Socks gave a quiet, shivery sigh. They should have come back for me at once, shouldn't they? He shook his head helplessly. Why would they take me out into the wild? What did I do to make them want to get rid of me? I let the children pick me up. I never bit anyone. It wasn't your fault. Mr. Dog gave him a supportive nudge with his nose. Sometimes people get pets with good intentions, but things change. Perhaps they had to move abroad or to a house with no garden. Perhaps they couldn't afford to look after you anymore, or perhaps they decided that a pet was just too much of a tie. He sighed. People can be silly and selfish. I'm sorry. Thank you, said Socks. He washed his whiskers and twitched his floppy ears. Well, anyway, Sneaker, Flip-Flop and Shoe deserve to be with their mother. Let's find her. Yes, Socks, let's. Mr. Dog grinned. Come on, you check one side of the lean-to and I'll check the other. The lean-to had been recently painted and Mr. Dog's nose was overwhelmed by the smell. The door was securely bolted so that they couldn't get in that way, and though the shelter looked rough in places, the wooden walls nailed and braced together quite clumsily, it was strong enough to resist them breaking in. Mr. Dog doubled back to talk to Socks. Did you find any sneaky ways inside? None, said Socks sadly. How can we get to the rabbits locked up in there? Mr. Dog looked at Socks. I've got a plan, but it's risky. Whatever happens to me, you must get Shoe, Flip-Flop and Sneaker back to their mother. They can't last much longer. Me? Socks cringed. Alone? You can do this. You have to. He gave Socks a pointed look. They're family, remember? Socks drooped his ears. Yes, all right. You can rely on me. I know, Mr. Dog said before smiling and nudging Socks towards the bunnies. Then he got up on his back legs and banged his front paws against the door of the lean-to, rattling it as hard as he could. The bolts held, but the noise was like a gun firing, and the rabbits inside gave a chorus of nervous squeaks. Come on, Hussan, thought Mr. Dog. You've got to investigate this. Sure enough, Hussan soon appeared, poking his head up from one of the buildings. He hurried towards the lean-to, and Mr. Dog quickly ran and hid behind it. Good man, he thought. For all you know, whatever made that noise is inside. With relief, he heard the scrape of the bolts and the wooden door creak open. The squeaking of dozens of rabbits filled the air as Hussan went inside. Squeak, 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 squeak. Mr. Dog reappeared from hiding and looked over to where Socks was waiting worriedly with Shoe, Flip-Flop and Sneaker. Good luck, he whispered. Then he turned back to the door and barked as loudly as he could. Hussan immediately came outside again, frowning at the sight of Mr. Dog. Mr. Dog charged towards him and jumped up enthusiastically, pushing Hussan backwards before springing away to sit in the doorway, tongue hanging out, panting. What the? Said Hussan. It's you again, the stray dog from yesterday. Mr. Dog woofed and ran away from the lean-to, hoping with all his heart that Hussan would not bolt the door before he followed. To make doubly sure, Mr. Dog ran over to the snack van, stood on his hind legs, and scrabbled at the door handle. Oh, no, you don't, Hussan said warningly. I'm rather afraid I do, thought Mr. Dog as the door swung open and he dived inside. He'll come after me all the more if I've got something he wants. And he used a combination of paws and jaws to force open the little fridge inside and quickly bit into a long string of sausages. That'll do, he thought, distracting and delicious. Got you, came a man's booming voice behind him. Hussan stood in the doorway with one of the big rabbit nets, ready to hurl it over Mr. Dog. Oh dear. Looks like Mr. Dog's got himself into a little bit of a sticky situation if Hussan is just about to catch him. But the good news is that hopefully they've found all of the rabbits that are in the lean-to, and maybe Mother Rabbit is in there as well, and hopefully she can be reunited with her baby bunnies. You'll have to come back tomorrow to find out what happens next in chapter 9, and I look forward to seeing you all then. Take care. Bye.